But first things first, who is speaking to you right now? So my name is Martin. I have with me Sébastien. We are here from Orange Business. I'm pretty sure you know Orange, like as a brand for telecommunication, as a mobile provider, so to say. Orange Business is a subsidiary, 30,000 people, system integrator in IT mainly, integrating things from network connectivity to cybersecurity, unified namespace, and all the data stuff, like everything that comes on top in terms of business case, value-driven things, AI, agents, etc. And today we will show you a real demo in plastic film production. Of course, this is not really I would say, not the appropriate process description, right? It's an extrusion blown film machine process, whatever. But I thought it's self-explanatory if we name it plastic film production for today. And well, I'm coming from the manufacturing. I was working in automotive at first, then in aerospace, then in building automation, and latest in software like PTC, so CAP server. I think you know all this kind of solutions, ThingWorks. And when I started to realize, okay, I always create data silos, it's not really a good thing. The topic about unified namespace came up, right, with Walker Reynolds. And to me, this kind of unified namespace architecture is really a game changer that can enable any Industry 4.0 case. If you think about that, why didn't Industry 4.0 develop from 2011 up to now? One of the issues, I think, is because of technology. The other one will be a cultural one. But machines can talk since 30 years, but we were not able to listen properly to the machines up to now. And what we'll be covering today, and I'm trying to switch slides again, we will cover the why, right? So why is a business case a business case? What is a business challenge? The journey towards a UNS, but also what works, what doesn't work, what things to avoid. And then we are going into a live demo of what we have created for today. And, oh, sorry, I switched too fast. So before we even get into this technology thinking, it's quite important to understand that technology doesn't really solve a business issue. And successful digital transformation projects never start with technology. And I heard, like before in one of the talks, yeah, we are doing a lot of testing on this and that. And the issue is many of these initiatives in manufacturing that are starting with just like we are testing a new technology, we are implementing a new tool, which could even be like a new drill or something. It doesn't work out. You don't have the business case, you don't have the monetarization, you don't have the buy-in from the operators. You're just testing things for testing things, and then it flies somewhere else. And what McKinsey did, I think 2-3 years ago, was a study saying 74% of all those kind of trials, they call it pilots, are stuck in the pilot phase, right? So they never scale, and that's a real issue. And you would like to avoid that, right? And today we are speaking about the business challenge of this particular company that is producing plastic films. And we are speaking about and looking at the OEE. And the OEE is a value in manufacturing that is quite important. It's the overall equipment efficiency, which is basically availability times performance times quality. And it gives you a real view of things and let's say how your production line performs. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of the KPI, but let's say for today, it will be very easy to explain, right? And what you see here on the right is the process at the manufacturing facility, how they are producing this kind of film. And as you can imagine, if this kind of foil breaks, you are directly in downtime. And downtime costs money, right? So you have money loss. On the other hand, you need to throw away everything that you have produced so far. And let's say from a business perspective, if you look at that, it's not a very good state, right? He's working manually on it, and availability, performance, quality, OEE will go down. Everybody will feel it, right? The shop floor guy, the operator, but also the CFO, because you made a lot of waste instead of creating a product that you can sell. And now we are all here in this group of people believing, and I suppose we are all believing in this topic of data. and having data to really understand where to improve, how to improve. Now, it could help to have data in real time here, but how would you define what data helps on what kind of part during the production process? How would you find it out? You're just reading out PLC data, and you might not even know how it interferes with the production process. So the context is missing, right? And now it's very mandatory to think about, before thinking about technology, to think about what happens really in the production shop floor. And here in this example, there are several things happening, right? You're putting raw material in, you're heating it up, you're then somehow blowing this foil, you're cooling it, you're doing quality checks and have a finished product that you can send to a customer. And how can you gain as an integrator or as a consultant the knowledge that you need, right? And it will only work if you work together with the operator. So going on the shop floor with the operator, walking around, asking him questions. And beforehand, somebody said Siri, DTMA, Smart Industry Readiness Index, or Digital Transformation Maturity Assessment. Both are valid to do and perform. It will help you to understand where is the context, how does the data point interact with your business process, so with the challenge. And this will help you to gather why does a downtime happen and how to avoid it. And now I was with a coffee capsule manufacturer roughly 10 years ago in Brazil. They had a downtime issue every 50,000 capsules they were producing. The whole production line was going down. They analyzed all the machine data they had. They didn't find the reason. They were asking us at that time to travel over and tell them why things are happening like that. And with that time, I was with PTC. We had a very good solution to do that, but we were capturing not only machine data, but also the data from the building management system. So environmental data like humidity, temperature, etc. Then we correlated and we found out that the humidity and the temperature interfere with the machine itself and broke it. And that was a reason, let's say, to find for the downtime. Right? So it's not only about the machine data, but really interacting with data sources that you can find around the shop floor. And in this particular case, with this film manufacturer, we walked with the operators through the production line and mapped 470, it's a bit more, but 470 data points to the real production steps. And let's say that will really help you to understand the challenge and how to resolve it. Right? One key aspect here is just like to understand that you cannot architect something very good in IT on something that you don't understand. That's why you need to really understand the production process. And from a visualization perspective, you can visualize this extrusion film blowing machine process like that. You can also map the data points to it. It will help you to gather which data point can interfere with which process step. For example, if you have a raw quality, a measurement for the raw material quality, it can interfere on all the process steps because it's, well, the most mandatory KPI here. On the other hand, now you understood the technical challenge, right, from the customer or from your own company. On the other hand, a UNS or any digital transformation project needs to bring some value. What does it mean? It needs to address the correct business challenge. And sorry for the words, but business challenge in terms of the most critical business interferences that costs you a lot of money. And you can gather those kind of things by utilizing assessment methodologies like DTMA and Siri. They will help you to get the focus areas you should prioritize. And then on the other hand, you are able to even compare that with competition from the same industry. So that you see for each of the dimensions that you have checked, hey, where am I standing? If I compare that from a aerospace manufacturing perspective, Airbus versus Boeing, you will encounter that the automation level will be similar. So there is no real area you can improve in right now. And then maybe another area might be the one you need to work on. And the second topic you need to think about is monetization. Like, how can you really derive the euros in the end, or US dollars, from each of the use cases? And that's a very boring slide, and it's in German, sorry for that. But it's just giving you the idea on how to create things. You need to create some formulas, which can be very basic, right? In order to create the euro value in the end. There are some examples. Let's just pick one. I don't have a valid OEE, right? What can I do? What is it like? How can I grab it in money? And you could say, okay, if I don't have a valid OEE, I might miss OEE optimization of a certain amount of percent. Then I know how many hours my production runs per year. Maybe it's 4,000, maybe it's 7,000. And then I know how much money does a production hour cost. And then I can just multiply it and have my use case or business case. And the same applies to any of the challenges that you are listing down. It could be also challenges like, we have too many alignment meetings, how many people, how many hours, what is the cost per hour of those people? Quite easy, and it helps you to derive the value for your management and also for yourself, right, for the project. And on the other hand, you need to stick to a Pareto principle, 80-20. It's not like to be super accurate in those calculations, but if you just, well, estimate, you get a very good quality already. And just, there's one more topic. Just after having done, let's say, the analysis of the technical hurdles, I have my business case, my business challenge. I'm pretty sure I want to do a unified namespace project. Then there will be people in your company or at your customer side that will say, hey, we already have MES, we have historians, we have OPC-UA. Why can we not do it just with this kind of technology stack? And how would you react to it, right? Anyone? No? Okay. Sorry? Yeah, correct. That's a good answer already. So the answer will be yes, you could do it with the current technology stack if you have MES, historians, OPC-UA, but you will end up in vendor lock-in, data silos. It will be very slow to integrate new things. It will be very slow to adapt things. You will create a lot of APIs. In the end, you will have a spaghetti architecture, right? That could be a response. And so the UNS concept to me, and also to us, is like publish once, subscribe many. Like the sender and the receiver of the data don't know each other. They don't need to know each other. And let's say this is from a business perspective where I would like to end and switch from the business view into the technology view. Now, what we have seen at this particular client is point-to-point integrations. They were already collecting data, but it was locked in systems that were not shared properly. And then we had teams that were using Excel spreadsheets, but also teams that were using Google Sheets. Now, the combination of both was done manually by students. Yeah, so just think about the maturity level of those things and how failure prone those kind of processes are. And to me, and I built a house many years ago, but to me, it's like building a house with not a proper foundation. And you need to think about those kind of things when you speak to your clients and look at the processes. What we then did is a functional architecture view, which is solution agnostic, and it's blurry on purpose because it's customer data. But it helps to find the good solutions per process step of the production of a company. And that functional view is very theoretical. And in my own opinion, a UNS project and nearly any digital transformation project should be really done on the shop floor, not on paper, right? So that's why we let Pac-Man eat this kind of theory thing for today and just switch into the next topics. What we would like to avoid in a final solution is the topic of vendor lock-in and data silos, right? But also you would like to avoid this being trapped in MES historians and SCADA systems. So there is a vendor out there, and I will not name it today. They are claiming to have a UNS, which in fact is just a historian. Well, I would not put all my data in historians. I would not put it like the UNS in this kind of area, because I would not like to have performance issues in the OT environment. So those are things to avoid. And that's like funny in brackets, right? There are many companies claiming to provide a UNS solution per se, like buy it off the shelf. But from my personal view, there is no COTS solution, so custom off the shelf, that you can just buy and install. It's always, and it needs to be always adapted to the up-to-date process at the client side. And then this kind of final solution architecture view helps you to understand, let's say, the UNS concept. We did it today, so I will just skip this kind of explanation. But on the other hand, a UNS project is not a technical one. To me, a UNS project is more a cultural one. We always see, and well, in my past, I was an OT guy. We always see this gap between OT and IT. So OT comes up saying, oh, there's another IT system that they want to throw over the wall, and IT is saying, oh, there's another OT problem coming up, right? So it's always this kind of, let's say, cultural thing. And what we did, and what is quite important also when we work with customers, is really working with the shop floor guys all together. IT, OT, other vendors, because you might have other suppliers that you need to work with, in order to create an architecture that is really fitting the purpose. And so joint workshops, right? And another big topic that I encountered in the past is that OT people always think that you're replacing ERP, MES, and SCADA. And most of the times it's not the case, right? Most of the times if you're implementing a UNS, it's just an additional, I would say, mean to create a digital data backbone for legacy, but also for modern systems. And just to keep that in mind, right? And last but not least, one big topic is also cybersecurity. Now, a UNS does a lot in terms of cybersecurity. It decouples machines, right? No machine needs to know the endpoint. It only speaks to a UNS. It reduces the attack surface. But on the other hand, you need to also think about, how can I access machines? Is there a virtual network? How can I open up a firewall in a secure way? What do I need in terms of authentication, etc., etc.? But those are just like the nitty-gritty picks that you need to think about when implementing a UNS. And now I would like to hand over to Sébastien with an introduction first, right? And the demo.
Perfect. Thank you, Martin. So I am Sébastien, a data engineer responsible for the data pipeline of this project. Let's go for this demo. But first, please give me 3 more minutes to introduce you the architecture behind that. I am responsible of the data pipeline, but I was not alone in this project because I was collaborating with some colleagues more focused on the UI, and you will see they did a wonderful work. So it is working perfect. Classic architecture, as we already seen some today. We can find 3 main blocks: data acquisition and 2 use cases. So with this architecture, we see the purpose of a UNS here materialized with the IdenQ solution, which is a single source of truth for multiple use cases that may be not related at all. With our demonstrator, we identify 2 different use cases, one operational one and a decisional one. So the first one is intended to be used on site by the production line supervisor and so on. They are inserting data in a time series database and then visualizing it using an easy tool like Wassmann, providing the possibility for the user to add the display, the dashboard that they want, with a minimum of knowledge in BI and only focus on the data. On the other hand, for the decisional analytics, we link the UNS to the cloud and provide Power BI reports. And this is more intended for data analysts and marketing team to have a global view on aggregated data on the dollar value of the productions, whatever happened during this production. But first, we need data in the UNS. So what about the data acquisition? we based our demonstrator on real data coming from a real factory for plastic extrusion. We have a data set over approximately 1 year, in 2018, and we replay this data set by sending the record one by one. We capture those records with Node-RED again, and forward it as MQTT via IMQ. You may note that Node-RED here acts as a gateway which can be deployed on Edge, and for this purpose, IMQ proposes another tool, which is IMQ Edge, which embeds natively some industrial protocol adapters to easily connect to OPC UA, Modbus, S7, and so on. So this is the next step of our work, to replace this with an edge solution that can be deployed on edge devices already existing in the factory. So you understand the added value. So what does our UNS looks like? I will go back to my MQTT Explorer, which was not ready.
No.
Okay, we can connect. You can see that here I am connected to the cloud. So in addition to our two use cases, we also made a bridge, thanks to an IMQ extension, to connect our UNS to another cloud services. You see the structure of the UNS according to ISA 95, where you can easily identify the plant area and the production line. For each of the components, you have the timestamp, the value, and some metadata to help you get some context, which is the purpose of the UNS. After that, come back to the first use case with Grafana. We said that those data are inserted inside a time series database in order for the production line supervisor to also access an history of the production. Okay. Not only an history, but also the current status. This is why the main part of this dashboard is the status of the current production. When everything is in black, it is good. Okay, everything is right. But sometimes you may have some warning or alerts. Let's send a nightmare scenario with a film breakage. We speed up the presentation to avoid 1 hour of waiting time, and soon everything will become white. So I talked about a deviation. What it is exactly? It is a deviation between the actual measure and the target measure, the target value, because in all the 460 variables that we capture from the field, we have some target data, some actual measure, and so we can easily make the ratio between them. You have also a summary of the current production, okay, an identifier of this production, a progression status, because if you launch a production of 50 rolls, okay, we are at the 10th, always good to know, and a brief overview of the health status of each sensor, the deviation, and so on. And now everything is broken. The film explodes. There is a film breakage. And you see here the health of the sensor, which is the deviations and the warning and alert. This is an image, an history of the number of sensors that are in deviation or defective. You can also have some monitoring of the main metrics, like the thickness of the final product, because our final product is a plastic film made of different layers. In this complex example, we have 3 different extruders using 3 different raw materials in different proportions. And so it means 3 different layers and so on and so on. And we can easily monitor the final product, but we can also monitor any variable that we want, because remember, it is intended for production line supervisor, so they know the devices, and they can see, okay, I will check the history of this specific sensor. Okay, I told you I have a film package. I saw the history of the sensor health. Now I want a breakdown view on each sensor. It is quite easy to build this kind of dashboard where you can see the history of the health sensor for each one. And if I want to go a step further, okay, it is in red, so the deviation is above a certain threshold, but how much is it above? Wassmann also provide the possibility to have this kind of heat map where you see, okay, there were some sensors that are deviating at around 70%, while some other can go up to above 200%. So finally, a view which is really technical for OT people, which is a bit similar to a SCADA or an MES maybe, but which bring the added value to be modified by people with limited knowledge in BI. Next, I told you about a Power BI intended for an higher approach, more focused on profitability, but that still rely on a certain knowledge of the production. Okay, my customer ordered 50 rolls of this specific materials. What happened during the production? And finally, is it profitable or not? Because they request me an order, I provide them a quotation. I want to fit the quotation to have maximum benefit, of course. Thanks to this kind of display, I can see for each production the duration, but also a quality score, and the real margin that we did. Because I was discussing with a colleague recently who also had an experience with this kind of customer, and he said it is really difficult to find those data, to really get the real number to compare the actual production to the quotation. Thanks to UNS, here we can rely on those kind of data. We can see if we have a breakage or not, and you can also have some breakdowns on the production. So I told you one production of 50 rolls. Okay, so this is the number of rolls that are sent, but how many did we really produce? We can have some that have quality issues, or that were not complete, or because of a film breakage, and so on. And the goal of all of this is to help people, data analysts, to extract insight from all this lake of data, with finally some global KPI for the overall efficiency. To come back to the beginning of the presentation. And if you go on a production, you can also see what was forecast and what are the extra costs, with a breakdown between the origin of the cost. So you have the raw material, but you also have the power consumption and also the wage of people that are paid to fix the production line instead of producing something that will have an added value. This gives you a global view of all the production, but we can still go one step further by analyzing the production itself, roll by roll, and so we can see the status of each roll which was produced, and we have a breakdown to the timestamp. So here it is one which was incomplete, and we have another one with a film breakage, there. And you also have a scorecard for each timestamp where you can identify when there were an issue in the production. You don't know why, but at least even with the higher view in the office, you can see when an issue occurred. You have also the quality score for each role individually, and finally profitability, a margin by role, which give you more knowledge on what you are selling. After those use cases, I suggest to come back to the conclusion of this presentation to list the key consideration to bear in mind after that.
So just as a summary, right, some key aspects that we discussed today. You should not be and you cannot really architect something very useful on something that you don't understand. So really work together as a team, together with OT, with IT, with vendors. Avoid those SCADA, MES to Excel setups. It's not sustainable, right? Avoid vendor lock-ins as far as possible. Take a proper look into your solution architecture, that you really avoid vendor lock-ins in future. It captures some money, right? If you're bound in a contract with a company that holds your data and they are just raising the money, the amount of money they want per year, then of course you need to evaluate the business cases, right? Use the principles 80-20, for example. Also 20% of the challenges will cover 80% of the money in the end. And try things. And I'm a big fan of trying things not on paper, but really in the original environment. So as a pilot, not as a lab POC. The issue is you cannot predict on paper, and you can also not predict after having done everything in your lab. There will be some organizational challenges, most likely not technology ones, might be, but most likely organizational hurdles that you need to overcome. And last but not least, and one presenter from today also told it, governance, naming convention, thinking about the project as not being an IT only project. It's not an OT project. It's not a vendor only project. It's a one together that's a unified namespace about. And if you think about that, if you don't have buy-in from any stakeholder, like an operator, you will fail. Your project will simply not go anywhere. If the management says we do that, it will not work. And yeah, so let me just end with this kind of end slide, right? If you have managed now your pilot, you managed maybe even to scale, you need to think about certain things as well, right? How to manage changes. So change management, version management. What do you do when you want to add a producer of data, like a new machine, or a consumer of data, like a new application? How do you handle it? Data ownership. You need also to think about what happens and what can you do if there's some kind of issue with your UNS. How do you service it? Do you have service levels? Do you have a help desk? Those kind of things you need at least to think about. And just in case, you can always take a partner that helps you on scaling, right? If you think about Orange, it's 30,000 people, 65 countries. So just as a reminder. And then don't let Pac-Man eat your practical part of the project, right? Okay. Thank you very much.